So, a very good evening to one and all present, and welcome to a brand new episode of VUTV by Vijay Bhumi. This is your host, Kritika Padode Bhandari, and we are back to you with a new episode on our weekly series that we call Educators Speak. Every week on Educators Speak, we are joined by eminent educators, and we discuss topics related to the future of education. Today, we are discussing a very important topic and a topic that is widely discussed and debated in all households. Firstly, the importance of school in the life of children. And secondly, how to find the ideal school for your child. As soon as children are born today, we can see parents start collecting brochures and prospectus of various schools. They start frantically making various visits to the various top schools, just somehow wanting to get an admission for their child. A lot of times, parents also end up overstretching themselves in terms of financial needs and financial capacities to get the best for their children. So let's put some order to this madness today. Let's first understand that what is the importance of school, and second, how do we find this ideal school for our children? And while I was conceiving this particular session, I knew that I had to get a principal with a vast and diverse interest in the field of education. And I knew that I could have nobody better than John Andrew Sir, who could join me, the founding principal of the South City International School, Kolkata. Sir has more than 30 years of experience in the field of education. He has been a teacher, he has been a school administrator, he has been a principal, and also he's been an author, which just shows his commitment to the cause of education. He has written books in the area of environment for children. Recently, he has written books in the area of general knowledge. He has been conferred various prestigious awards for his commitment to the cause of education. Thank you very much, sir, for taking out the time and joining us this evening. It's really a pleasure to be conversing with you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. And I really am very happy to share my insights on the wonderful questions that you are going to put forth. And I hope our audience find it very enriching.
I am sure, sir, with you being on our show, they are definitely going to find it very helpful and very enriching. And without further ado, let's just begin this conversation because they are all waiting to hear from you only. So my audience members, you all already know we do this on a weekly basis. If you have any questions, you can send us your questions in the chat box feature, and I will make sure to make it a part of my conversation with sir. So, sir, without further ado, let's begin. My first question to you is, I think this is the most important question, which is that what is the role of a school in child development?
Well, thank you for starting off with such a valid question with respect to schooling and children, because everyone knows that even when they are in the planning stage for a child, they are busy wondering on how they should go about and which school would be the most apt for the child. And depending on the cities and the states or wherever country you are, they also look at the neighborhood that they're staying in, because some rules are very strict that you would be going to that school in that neighborhood itself. So, and I must start off here by saying that though schooling is very important, formal schooling, there are a large group of parents, even in India, who prefer to have homeschooling.
Okay.
And homeschooling has caught on in a large way and gained a lot of perspective and followers due to the pandemic. And virtually, we were all into the homeschool world for 1 year and still going on. But coming back to your accurate question of role of school, now, when a child is growing, the child obviously has certain learning stages.
Okay.
And these learning stages are all connected with the development of the brain. And there are certain benchmarks that need to be monitored. And if there are experts around who understand these benchmarks, for parents per se, they are lay people. And other than the medical fraternity, parents themselves, even if they are from the medical field, may not recognize or not want to understand if they are delayed benchmarks. So there should be a formal institution, and that place, a formal institution where children go. Why? to develop their benchmarks, what they need to attain. They need to have cognitive skills. They need to have kinesthetic skills. They need to develop peer learning. So there are so many of these attributes that are needed to support the brain development. And that's why we all go through the conditioning of a school. And that's how the concept of school is there to take you from K to 12 and set a base for the child to get into the rat race called life.
Absolutely. So I think that's beautifully put. And you're absolutely right. This is a topic that we had spoken about recently on our show, which was, the growth of all these alternate models of schooling, like homeschooling, which suddenly, I think, especially due to the pandemic and due to, people staying at home and, seeing their children getting schooled at home are actually, you're seeing a growth in the number of parents who are also opting for this. So that's a wonderful insight, sir. And now I have to ask you this question because I have a lot of parents who have joined me today, which is that, what is the way? What are the factors? What are the parameters that one must keep in mind while choosing the ideal school for their children?
Okay. So to be very concise and brief, when you are looking at a school for a child, I would say the first thing in my mind as a parent should be, do I recognize my child? Do I know what my child is? And one should look, the priorities of the parent should be, what is the best fit where my child will be taken care of? See, everything else will fall into place. There are institutions and there are institutions. But you have to look at, irrespective of boards and fees and infrastructure, etc. And those things we will be discussing in due course of time. First, about the type of institution that you would be looking at for your child. How valid is it? Is it a fly-by-night operation? Has it been existing? So you have to look at the authenticity of the organization. You have to check with people around, with children that you see around, which school are you studying? What do you teach? Even if you have neighbors or teachers, how is the management? How are the children? Is there a free policy there? What is the type of assessment done? So a lot of homework needs to be done about the type of organization, institution, building, where you'll be putting your child in. I'm using the word building because then we come to the safety issues. Correct. Is my child going to be safe there? How safe is the institution? Do they check the background of their teachers, of their class 4 staff? What is the proximity of the school from my house? Okay, I have 3 schools in my vicinity. They're all very good schools. Then I may go on to the next. What board do I want for my child? What is my financial capacity?
Correct.
Does a school which charge extra automatically become the best school?
Correct.
Or does a school which has low fees and poor infrastructure or very good infrastructure? So there are lots of parameters that parents are confused with. But I think after looking at proximity, fee structure, board, and the ability of the school to have a vision for each and every child, rather than a mass production, to see that there's a tailor-made proposal for your child so that your child's needs are taken care of. So depending on the type of your family background, these are different points that you will have as priority. I would not say this is priority or this is priority. You as a family will look at what is the best for my child. I have lots of money. Okay, then I will look safety. I will look at location. But if I'm able to send my child to the school which is far off by private transport. So these are things which are flexible. But ability of a growth of a child in a very progressive environment with the right views and values is something that a parent will have to look for.
Wonderful, sir. I think that's a very good way to put it. And I think these are some very important questions that we need to ask ourselves as a family before we take that decision. Authenticity is key, safety extremely important. Third, I think, again, very, very important that, we sometimes tend to forget this, that, the school needs to have an individualized sort of approach to our students. We don't want, because it's not the one size fits all that works
Yes,
with children.
yes, yes.
Everybody is unique. Everybody's learning and thinking abilities are different. So we need to make sure that it's a school that probably caters to a more customized sort of an approach. Now, there's one thing, sir, that you made up, made a part or made a reference to while you were answering, which is about parents trying to first understand what their child is, like what is the sort of makeup of the child, and then sort of get into this evaluation assessment process to figure out which school to send their children to. Nowadays, school children are actually getting enrolled in schools fairly early,
Absolutely.
which has its advantages and
Yes,
disadvantages.
yes.
That's a different debate in itself. But what I'd like to know from you is, how do you think parents should, engage with their children in an early stage to sort of, first identify that what sort of a personality is their child?
Okay. So this is, as you rightly pointed out, sadly, children are going to a formal school environment at the age of 2.5. Some preschoolers also go to Montessori schools, not Montessori, I would not use that word in a loose sense, but play schools from 1.5 to 2 years. So kids are entering into formal education at a very, very young age. Now, when I say formal education, I mean they're getting into the structured environment. So when parents have to observe their children, I think they are basic. You can see whether there's a response from your child. What is the eye movement? Does your child respond? Because vision, hearing, speech, these are things that a parent can easily observe at home. These are the basic signs that one would look for. Is my child getting to hear different sounds? I can see, if it's a first child, I can see children in the joint family or the neighbors at that age having certain milestones. So the pediatrician, of course, helps a lot. I am speaking from experience in the sense I get a lot of parents who are aware that their child has delayed speech or delayed milestones. So, based on this, is my child an extrovert? Even at 2.5, you do understand how active the child is, how smart the child can be. Most of them are very smart. Almost all of them, they are the digital kids and they're very, very talented and
They know
dynamic.
very well how to use all the devices.
Everything, everything. So, based on that, you need to know now if there are special considerations for your child, if there are delayed milestones for your child, would a general school with 60 to 70 kids in a classroom, in spite of being the best school in the city, be able to take care of your child who has delayed milestones? Your child may not be able to focus much, always hyperactive, getting up, running, not being able to concentrate. So, even as a mother who doesn't have this knowledge, there could be some understanding that my child is hyperactive. सुनता ही नहीं, बैठता ही नहीं एक जगह पे, but that is could be an example of ADHD. So, getting your child into a school which understands the signs and symptoms and is having a smaller size of children in the classroom would definitely help your child grow and blossom.
Absolutely. I think those are some very, very, I think, useful insights. And I think what is key and at the heart of this, and I think what Sir is also trying to put forth, is it's very important for us to engage with them. It is
Yes.
very important for us to read those signs, because it's also very common practice these days that, since this is a digital generation, like you said, to get them off your back, we just put them with the devices and, then we just let them be. But we realize that while they may not bother us during that time, we are losing engagement time with
Yes. Yes.
them. And
Yes.
that is very key, because that should actually be the center of this decision that you're making, that which school you should be putting your child into. Now, the third question is again a very hotly debated question. So, you have the IB board, you have the IGCSE, you have the Cambridge board, you have CBSE, you have ICSE, you have the state boards, you have open schooling. How does one navigate their way through all these various different boards? Because all the different boards like are anchored on different philosophies. The curriculums are also different. The way they teach is also different. So, according to you, sir, how do we sort of figure out that which is the ideal board for the student? Or, since in your experience, which board do you think does a fantastic job in terms of delivery of education?
Okay, coming to this very crucial point, we are now moving towards the national education policy. And the national education policy looks at unification of the curriculum and syllabus. And when we speak about the curriculum and syllabus, it's basically only three basic things: the what, the how, and the whether. What is being taught, how it is being taught, and whether there are assessments. So those rubrics of assessing based on what, how, and whether are what the boards are dealing with. Now, initially, maybe 5 to 6 years ago, boards, especially the Indian boards, you have a state board, you have the central board, and you have the Council for Secondary Education, CISC, commonly called ICSE school, ICSE and ISC. So based on these factors, the curriculum and the content has been sort of unified, especially for CBSE and CISC schools. People after class 10th felt, oh, CBSE is better, more portion covered for entrance exams. But all that is now a fallacy, because the boards, both the national boards, have worked together to see that there's less of difference in class 11 and 12. Now, that is the what, the how it is being taught. Now, when we speak about international boards, the strength of an international board has always been the flexibility and the mode of assessing. So the type of application of knowledge that is there. But those lacuna which were there in our two leading national boards, both the CBSE and the CISC, both these lacuna, whether flexible, both have been removed over a period of time. The CBSE and the CISC both offer a lot of flexibility of subjects for students. Take, for example, 10 years I was earlier in a CBSE school. Now I'm in a CISC school. So the flexibility that is offered, a student of humanities in class 11 can also opt for biology, or even if you're wanting science, you can do physics and chemistry and not do, or you can do physics and bio and not do chemistry. So flexibility of subjects is there right from school. You can even drop mathematics from grade 9 and 10 if you find maths is too difficult. Earlier in the international board, you had the core and the extended syllabus. So those assets or plus points of an international board are now coming to the Indian national boards. And just recently, the secretary, Mr. Arathun, for CISC has said, even the council, CISC, is planning to go international and having an international accreditation. So the lines of it's easier now for new age parents because these traditional lines of demarcation are decreasing. The what was the syllabus that is becoming uniform. The how is the curriculum being delivered. So that would differ still from an international board at present and an Indian board. But you also have to look at your personal background. Am I in a transferable job? What are the type of cities that I get transferred to?
Correct.
See, CBSE is a central board which is present all over India. And even if you go to a remote B-tier, C-tier village or city, you definitely have a Kendriya Vidyalaya. Correct. These CBSE is designed in that manner because their jawans, their people move across the country. And correct. So obviously they have standards of their level of education has to cater to the masses.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're going to certain cities in India, you may not get a large number, plethora of CISC schools. You may have to, and certain states have excellent state board schools.
Correct.
States like West Bengal, Maharashtra, so many other states. The state board schools are fantastic, topping in education, in the type of education delivery that they have.
Correct.
So the board actually is immaterial, again, or connected with the type of background you have. If you have your family business, you're going to stay there for years together, you're not moving, then it is a bit of whether I put in a CBSE or ICSE, but also depending on cost factor, the other parameters come into mind. Just a board by itself will not do. West Bengal, for example, was earlier purely with CISC dominated schools because the council and they preferred the ICSE schools. But now you have a large number of CBSE schools also coming into West Bengal. Plenty of them doing very well with a large number of students. So this demarcation is slowly going off. And obviously, even the universities in India are open to taking kids from international boards, whether it's IB or CIE, Cambridge. And the problem that was there earlier is because you have grades in the international boards, you have marks in the Indian boards. So,
Correct.
how easy it is for my child to secure admission. But again, that has been worked on.
Correct.
So, today it's a much easier decision to make depending on that cost factor, depending on location, proximity, safety, openness of the school. So, what is giving the best to my child, whether it's a CBSE school or ICSE school? So, the boards per se did have, yes, for the past, because I have taught 10 years, I've been in an international school, I've been in a CBSE, now in a CISC. So, I've seen the differences, but those differences are getting marginalized
Correct.
and kids can easily transfer
Transit.
with parents. Their movement can be easily done from CBSE to CISC to IG. It happens with a little effort. It's not a big deal today.
Absolutely, sir. I think that's very accurately put. And I strongly feel even, with the national education policy coming in, these lines are actually going to get blurred further.
Yes,
Because,
yes.
the way there again, it's completely the policies learner centric. Learners are at the core of the school education system. There's a lot of flexibility that's being offered, which you very rightly said was always an advantage that was available in the international boards. But now with these sort of moves that are coming in, even in our Indian education spectrum, I think definitely those lines are going to get blurred. And yes.
I have, sorry to interrupt you, I have just 2 points here. The flexibility that is offered by the Indian boards is not always offered by a majority of schools
Correct.
because they still remain rigid in their approach. Because if you give that flexibility to children, its logistics and planning is very difficult and you may land up with just few kids for a certain subject. That is one aspect. And the second aspect, which I would still like to mention with respect to international boards and Indian boards, are Indian boards, the base for our Indian education system is very, it's supposedly a lot, it's very taxing for the children because we teach our kids from a very young age. And you have the international boards who are quite lenient in the younger ages.
Correct.
So here I have a book of mine which is of class 1 when I was in class 1, and this
Wow.
is way back in 69. So going through this, the way we were taught in class
Wow.
1 in 69, way back in 69. So this type of handwriting you will not expect from a student in an international board at that young age, because our methodology starts at a very young age. I mean, this preservation of all these books is not thanks to me, but thanks to my mother who had kept all these preserved for, I mean, now I'm 50 plus and this is 69. So
Wow.
the point is, even at that time, the level of education imparted in our Indian board is a high degree.
Correct.
considered to be stressful by so many, but these kids of ours who go abroad do very well because they are so used to their so-called attention to detail, which comes at a young age.
Yes, that's very true. That's
So
very
that's one basic difference at a younger age. As you move up the ladder, the lines are blurred and the demarcation is less. But no, at the primary level, at the younger level, and they basically don't have something for grade 3, below grade 3. They consider the education basically from grades, age 6 onward.
correct.
Whereas
Correct.
we in India like our education to start from 2.5.
Exactly.
And so
Correct.
we,
That's true.
yes, and holding the pencil and writing straight
Yes.
lines, cursive line, slanting line, sleeping line, all those things.
Absolutely. And in the passing, I must say so, you had quite a beautiful handwriting.
Yes, thank you.
But I
But
must,
with teachers who used to give us on our knuckles even at that age.
I can imagine we've all been through it.
No erasers to be used. You use the eraser, you get it on your knuckles.
Absolutely. No,
So-
I can totally relate to that because I've been through a convent education as well. So the rules are standard and uniform there.
Absolutely.
So lovely, sir. In fact, while you were answering this question, actually, you have given me the perfect context for my next question that I'm meaning to ask you. So, the way our traditional schooling has actually been devised, it has also been devised in a way where students are very used to handle high pressure situations, being examinations. It's very common in, traditional schools, so to say, that, you have exams which start off fairly early. And now you have a lot of schools that are coming with a newfound new age approach, and I'd rather say an alternate approach to education where exams also start in fairly late. Also, there are multiple schools one hears of where, it's very optional on students that, okay, if you want to sit in the class, you can sit in the class. If you're not enjoying the class, you're free to go outside, observe
Yes.
etc. But both you and I know, especially the world is very competitive. India is extremely competitive. So this is a dilemma a lot of parents face. So while all these new age schools sound very idealistic and very new age in their approach, and it's obviously very enticing, one also can't distance themselves from the harsh realities that the world has to offer. So what are your insights on this? How do you make that decision? How do we resolve this dilemma in our head?
So good question, because when we speak about new age schools or progressive schools, in true sense, there are just 1% of schools across India may get into the progressive school bracket. When I say a progressive school, as you rightly pointed out, your attendance, your flexibility to come and go, your ability to whether you want to do this class or you can create your own timetable, your own schedule, that I want to whole day I want to do maths, or I would only today do English. For this week, I'll do only English. So that type of flexibility is not offered by a majority, or so very few. And the Waldorf methodology is definitely something that one can learn from, but we can use these good points like the Montessori system, which was started so long back, the Waldorf system. Schools would like to pick up traditional blended with the learning methodologies of these new age progressive schools. So I think parents should look at a school which has a nice blend. You cannot have pure traditional, but again, at the same time, when you look at a traditional school, look at the masses that we have to cater to in India. When you look at even a blend of these learning methodologies that are there enough schools in the country for the children who need to go to school? We all know that good schools like the one I'm working in or so many other schools are just catering to the tip of the iceberg. So that's a very broad spectrum, a sociological spectrum, which we would not be discussing right now. But the point being, if you find a school which has discipline, which has culture and values, importance to that, which does not pressure as a child into academic stress, that you need to join so and so class and you have to join a coaching center. There's so many schools today which are attached to coaching centers. So kids finish and get. So that is something which I definitely do not recommend. I recommend a school which has a perfect blend of flexibility and a 360-degree holistic development of the child to make your child socio-economically independent. Why is the child undergoing this 12 years of education? To become an economically viable member of society.
Correct.
So when you see a school and then a college, what is good education? Am I able to have the core soft skills? Am I able to communicate? Am I able to handle peer pressure? Am I able to interact with others? Am I able to take other ideas? Am I a team leader, team builder, delegate, leader? All this develops in a school, and the school with 60 or 80 kids cannot give your child the privilege of being a captain, of being a monitor, of getting in, because there's a huge number. But I'm not saying such schools don't churn out good students. It's just that the individual attention, maybe in a school which offers this blended learning, is a fantastic environment for your child.
Absolutely, sir. And I think blended is the key word of,
Yes.
new decade.
And in today's time and age, blended learning is obviously,
We are all talking about it, even like because of this experimentation with online education. We all
yes,
are saying that, now moving forward, it has to be blended off.
blended. Yes, yes.
And very correctly said, even in terms of, choosing the school, you have to choose a school that is teaching the same thing, so which has a bit of tradition, but in a new twist. So
Yes,
a hybrid model between the two.
absolutely.
So, sir, this is one thing that we obviously have to speak about, which is, this misconception that exists in large sections of our country today, that just because, the fees of a school is very high, then the school is likely to be a good school. Also, we are also known to do a lot of herd mentality, and a lot of herd mentality following,
Absolutely.
in one favor. Everyone's like, no, this school is the best, and we go for this. It's a high fees. It's an international board school, so this is it. This is, proclaimed the best school in the city for that time. So, under the garb of that, I'm seeing a lot of young parents, young professionals who are overstretching themselves, are having to take loans, because, obviously, this is playing on the insecurity of parents, right? Because it's such a big decision you take, which is about the future of your child. So if you can just clear this misconception, what do you feel about, the role of fees has to play in the quality of education?
Well, at the onset, to be very blunt, first of all, as you rightly pointed out, it's a misconception. There's nothing like a direct correlation between high fee structure equals to excellent facilities or infrastructure. Horse riding, swimming, gym, are these all required? I mean, all these are frills. Good quality education. Sitting here in West Bengal, I'll say you have Shanti Niketan and you have Open University, where you have our great Bart Tagore, and Rabindra Bharati University, where education happened under tree. From that extreme, air-conditioned classrooms, fancy Wi-Fi classroom, you need to have good teachers.
Correct.
And cost that you pay for school education is nowhere connected with the quality. There's no direct correlation. Obviously, you can have good teachers in schools which charge you more because they have a lot of infrastructure. They have grounds, they have different sports teachers, they have swimming, etc. But just because a school doesn't offer swimming and horse riding and a huge ground doesn't mean that's a bad school.
Correct.
I keep telling parents, look at, is your child happy in that school? The happiness quotient of a child is much more important than the parents' happiness quotient. Remember this. Parents, as you pointed out, get into this herd mentality because you have so many getting pressurized in the society, colony, joint family. My brother's kids are studying in XYZ. My sister-in-law's kids are there. Our neighbors' kids are there. So it becomes aspirational.
It's become simple.
I also need to put my child there. Whether your child will benefit in that school. Look at your child. Don't have this, as we said earlier, one size fits all. It cannot be the mentality. And cost is nowhere connected with quality of
Quality
education.
of education.
A school without infrastructure but having good hearts in mind, the head of the institution and the team of teachers. The teachers are the ones that you have to look at, the
Absolutely.
organization, management, and what type of teachers. If their heart is in the right place, your kid will definitely be nurtured and taken care of till your kid blossoms.
Absolutely.
Other things like going to this horse riding or lawn tennis or some other activities can be done after school hours in some locality club, etc. Don't depend on the school to give all those factors. Look at quality education.
Absolutely, sir. And I think, this is what he said. At the heart of school lies, the teachers.
Yes.
And that's what you need to focus on. And I think we need to stop seeing schools as status symbols.
Yes.
And it becomes
Yes.
a great talking point when we go to parties that, okay, my school also studies here, my student studies in this school, and my
Absolutely.
child studies. I mean, that needs to stop, right? I mean, we need to focus on what's best for our children and just, stop, using them as objects to, gain more popularity in society. Now, since you brought up that very important topic, I think my last question in today's conversation has to be this, that teachers are at the heart of the school, right?
Yes. Yes.
They carry that burden on their shoulders. So as parents, how can we assess what is the teaching methodology that's being followed in school? How do we assess the qualitative factors when it's related to teachers? Because that is very important. Like you said, every child is different. I might have a child who may not be a very fast learner. So I would want my child to be in a school where, the teachers are paying extra attention and they're sensitive to her or his, condition. So how do we assess that as a parent with limited knowledge?
Yes, with limited knowledge, I think it's very important. As I started off in the beginning, it's very important for a parent to do a lot of groundwork and homework. We are entrusting our child into an unknown organization.
Correct.
So we have to take care of checking everything. So, as I said earlier, speak, if possible, observe or speak. Find out which children, find out from your friends, community, which children go to that school.
Correct.
Ask the kids directly that, beta, how is this? How are your teachers? Do they shout at you? What? Ask from the parents that how happy are you with that school? Try and find someone whose child studies in that school.
Correct.
In your society, in your community, look at their web page. Find out whether they are socially active, whether they have a Facebook page, whether they have an Instagram page, whether they have a web page. There should be a school website where you get to see the different activities conducted. Are you able? So a lot of homework and groundwork has to be done. And when I interview parents and ask them about how they all speak about word of mouth. So people are speaking, and people from other cities, when they look at, you want, just like you're doing a search for a hotel to stay or a resort, same way you look at and see all the reviews that are there which are present. Now, some reviews may be biased positively or negatively.
Correct.
But when you hear from many, not just one child, but you hear from different children, that what is being taught, how is the teaching going on?
Yeah.
You do hear of some well-known reputed schools that, sir, nothing is taught there. Only those same teachers take tuitions. You hear these comments also. The school is reputed, the teaching is there, but those teachers are so these are things that are not hidden in society.
Correct.
These are things that any chatty person does share. So parent should be interactive and find out and learn to be mature enough, responsible enough to remove the chaff, the wheat from all the chaff, and
Correct.
judge correctly. And
Correct.
maybe if a school permits, have a tour of the school. There are many schools who would like to have parents come in. There are some who don't allow parents, even existing parents, to enter their school.
Okay. Yeah.
So all depends from how you're greeted at the gate, how you're greeted on the phone. What is your response? You call up, you send an email, is there a response? So these are different factors which can help you not just decide the school for your child, but also how the teaching is going on. The best is to find out from the child itself on their website. Do they have anything for assessments? Is their website detailed? Because if with limited knowledge and limited information, one should not blindly get into a school.
Correct.
Be very aware of what is the vision and what is the mission of the school. And vision and mission, is it being completed? It's very good to have it on your website and keep it in your lobby and all. But are the teachers in sync with the school? How has the school progressed? Whether it's a 100-year-old school or a 10-year-old school, that is immaterial. Or if you have alumni, if they have an alumni, where are the alumni placed? How are they proceeding? Now, a child who has not done well in school, it doesn't make that child a failure in life. So when you speak about mode of teaching, whether there's constant assessments, every 2 months they're testing, or it is open book test, is the school progressive enough to have open book test? Or the school does not have examinations till grade 3, the child is just done on regular assessments. So these are things that one has to be doing a lot of homework.
Correct.
And find out.
Absolutely, sir. I think this is really important. And I think it's, as today's generation and the new parents coming in, I think we're a lot more aware. We have access to a lot more information that earlier generations did not have. I think we can use that to our benefit. I mean, and I think even generally, a lot of schools nowadays are at least more open to have a dialogue with parents. So the way, the schools ask us questions, I think it's important for us also to ask them very relevant and pertinent questions. To understand that, if this is actually a institution where our child can blossom.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
That is at the key of it. And I think even assessments, just blindly thinking that, this is the way things have been going, the normal way that, exams happen, that's the only conventional way. I think that's changing now, right? We have open book exams that are also happening. We have exams that are more like practice based rather than theory based. And those are also great ways. If you get to know a school is doing those, then those can also give you good insights into how, committed the school is to ensure that, your child is actually absorbing the right concepts. So I think, these are very important parameters, very important questions that I think Sir has left us with today, which I think we need to delve into detail. We need to realize that let us not just get swayed by either rankings or by what people are saying. I think we have to make this individualistic assessment ourselves as a family, as a unit, come together. Sometime, not hurry into decisions. Take some time and make some well-informed decisions. Thank you so much, John sir. It was such a pleasure conversing with you today. I think there's so much that I personally have also gained from this session. And I'm sure likewise, my audience members have also gained immensely from all your insights. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this evening.
Most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much to our audience members for joining us on a week-on-week basis. It is because of all of you joining us in good numbers that we have been encouraged to do this on a weekly basis. We're going to be back again on next Thursday at 5 p.m. where we're going to be in conversation with Mr. Kaisar Dopashi, the principal of Podar International School, Lower Parel. And we're going to be talking to him about what should children be learning in schools and how should we be assessing their learning. Thank you very much, everybody again. Thank you so much, John. It was such a pleasure to have you this evening. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye.